Hi, welcome back to the Dylan Rounds case. Welcome if you're currently here in the live premiere. I appreciate it. Today, we're actually going to be doing a new map analysis of a new location. A location we've not really focused on before. A location we've not really told a proper story or provided a backstory to it, what it's all about. Does it play a role in Dylan's disappearance or leading up to his disappearance? But today, we're going to lock on and we're going to focus. We're going to use previous comments, which I briefly read out. We're going to analyse them, apply them to the map. I've got it mapped out, new project, different routes, can measure the distance as well, and do like a reconstruction. Break it down, depict the story of someone like Brenner or maybe Don Hately on the day Dylan was taken out and desecration took place, okay? It may open up new avenues of discussions, and that's what's most important in this case. And as we do go along with those discussions and maybe additional questions, make sure to make use of the chat box on the right-hand side of the screen, the live chat. Share your thoughts, opinions, reactions. More to do so with Dylan Rounds, but you can also talk about a few other things in between, of course. As well, we can also check out the previous comments of the last video. Probably be somewhat short, that bit, so we can do that to begin with. Allow people to join on in to this live premiere, so everyone's all catched up. Miss T did join late yesterday by 7 minutes. Oh my god, Miss T 7 minutes late. That's very, very disappointing. Even though someone like Pack and Go or Weedleby ends up coming 30 to an hour later. I remember once Michelle turned up, don't know where she's gone since, but Michelle turned up at one point saying, "Hey everyone, 2 hours late." Wow. So, you know, just one of those things. Miss T also said when she had it on ×2 with the whip or something, it was like really rapid and it made a weird sound. So that's good to know. But, you know, more about that down the line because there will be probably more videos to come about all that wild stuff. And speaking of last night, right, regarding the Dylan Rounds coverage, did an interesting comparison, interesting, important questions raised regarding the 27th witnesses near Dylan's farm and the 28th witnesses near Sun Tunnels seeing a truck leaving the Grainshed property. If you want to hear more about that, about the comparison, make sure to check out my last video. A link will be down below in the comment section, pinned. Make sure to check it, as well as some other additional links as well below it or on top. Make sure. And yeah, as for the chat yesterday, I'd say it was interesting. It was a good combination of sticking to the case, maintaining a certain level of focus, a little bit of drama, a little bit of cat fights, and then also just messing around and being light-hearted, right? What you could say, there was varying levels of disruption, but it was kind of cancelled out by one another, which is good. So if you had the, you start from the worst part, the bitchiness, the cat fights, having to go at one another, calling some out, bit of tension, friction with one another and with the shack lady in between. But then that's cancelled out by some of the lightheartedness later on, and then cancelled out by some of the seriousness and questions regarding the Dylan Rounds case. So it was a good mixture, and it happened all in one go, like an ecosystem. There was a lot going on. Very interesting. But yeah, some of the conversations got to the point where, maybe because I was tired, right? We've been a bit sleepy, a bit tired because of, you know, doing it back to back, the videos and stuff. I was like, wait, what am I reading? What's being said here? Raffi, baby Raffi, lots of Raffis, Raffi toys. I thought, what's going on? So I got confused at one point. And then I think Miss T or something said, oh, there is something planned or something prepared. And I'm like, right, okay. So whilst all that stuff is going on, and whatever else is happening in the darkness, surprises, shocks, I don't know. It might come to light eventually. For now, at least, I'm going to try and remain innocent, like how I am. I am an innocent boy at the end of the day. And I think it's time we move on with the Dylan Rounds discussions and the new video, new focus of today. First, let's begin with the comments of the last video, see if there's any questions that need answering and any additional points of information of interest. Okay? Right, just going to adjust it to the newest. Doesn't look like we've got too many to get through, but there we go. Cindy Lee, I can't chat, been busy lately, but I'm still here. Cindy Lee has been around for a bit on the channel, watching most of the videos, so shout out to them. Clee, lots of interesting observations. Yeah, that seemed to be the case last night. I think Cleo did mention another comment as well, just a small scale one, but I'll just respond back to it. She raised a point about stop talking or stop caring about the views, but at the end of the day, whichever avenue, if you got a missing person case, you got a mystery, and you may have information which could solve it or lead to a new lead, progress being made, or you just want to spread awareness about an important issue, a question, you need answers. At the end of the day, it all revolves around people, okay? People answering back, people watching, people being alerted by it. And if no one's alerted by it, then obviously not many views, if not none at all. And then where do you go with the case? Nowhere. That's a failure. So it does matter to an extent. And as well, just a side natural mentality of if you do this or you do that and you put a bit of effort in, it's always good to see progress, but also something, coming out of it in a way. I mean, if you were very carefree, very reckless and just didn't really think about it, oh well, I just don't think it would be as practical, that mentality. It'd be kind of on par with if you went out there physically looking for Dylan, you found his remains, but you thought, oh well, I'll just walk away now. And it's like, what happens now? Oh well, it's not practical, is it? So that's how it translates with on YouTube, at least, when trying to get the answer out, the news spread, the focus, the balance, all of it, all ties in. Badger Life leaving a link here. I don't know what it's to be honest. Does anyone know? I didn't notice it before, so I'll have to check it out afterwards. The link provides a timestamp, 55 minutes, 55 seconds to about 57 minutes. Key timestamp within that video, whatever it's about. Once again, it's good that the links are showing up in the comment section and not being auto-removed by YouTube. Bit of progress there. We got Brian Reeves, long-time viewer as well. Shout out to Brian. I'm always happy to see another Dylan Rounds video. That's good to know. Next set of people, interesting. What I do want to raise, last night, we had a strange wave of people. As for the usernames, I don't know what order it was in. We had Jesus popping on in, dropping down from the heavens. Someone called Angel. You remember Angel? And they showed in the last video as well, thinking what's going on with all this whipping and the whole Betty Hayward situation. And then they were like, oh, I have to go now or something. And then they flew off. Then there was another person last night with a red profile picture, another angel. I mean, did the messengers come on down to reveal something? Because it didn't really lead to much. Oh no. Did Tyler Feller summon his bitch boys to come on down with their little soft dainty wings to whack me over the head with the Bible? Oh no. Probably those candles, the candle orders. Never successful transactions. Sorry. No, but it's a little bit weird, right? You know, focus in the chat right now. Isn't it weird? Those accounts showing up last night. The very first one, and I forgot the username, the person kept saying, why am I sad? I'm so sad. I'm so sad. And then I think other people in the chat kept saying salty or salty pancakes or just the first name salty. And then that person thought they were being called salty. The word salty can mean different things. It's also a degenerative, overused, sheepish word of language when calling someone out who may seem a bit pissed off, annoyed, kind of jealous, frustrated. Oh, you're salty, you know, one of those type. And I think they thought it was being aimed at them. And then they said, oh, I'm going to get really angry now. I'm coming after you, Raf. And it's like, who the fuck are you? What are you on? Why are you even coming after me? I wasn't even fucking talking about you. Like that. Now, when I did check the channel of theirs, I think it's like of a younger age range. The videos consisted of cartoons, scribbly stuff, little stick men, little colourful paintings and all of that. So of a certain audience, hence why their language wording will be of a different level, shorter sentences, more abbreviations, maybe the spelling slightly altered as well, behaviour, perception altered, retention, attention slightly lacking, more impetuous, a little bit more egocentric because maybe they haven't gone through the formal stages, the concrete stages, pre-operational stages of reasoning ability and understanding the world around and people's different points of views and what they actually mean, not grasping it, thinking it's all about them when it's aimed at someone else. So they retaliate in a defensive way because of the defense mechanisms within the brain, right? I think it's just based off that. That's what you got to understand, okay? Majority of people watch will be somewhat regulars, semi-regulars, but you will get new people coming on in with time, and you may get of a younger audience coming on in. Might not always be the case, but I can kind of sense when it happens. And you might wonder how and why. Well, because of the Kenny Veach mystery. The Kenny Veach case, M-Cave mystery, does bring in and attract a wide range of different age ranges, okay? It can be for good reasons, but also bad reasons, right? So with my video coverage extensiveness in the past, people will be still coming on in to this day. And when they do come on in, they may think, oh, this channel's doing a live premiere right now. Let's check on in and see what's going on. So that's why that happens there, right? And, you know, if I do upload short videos, shorts, gaming shorts, that will attract a different type of audience as well. So whilst the main videos right now are about Dylan and this and that, in the background there is still stuff going on which is bringing in different people, right? I said sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it is what it is. But yeah, some dodgy accounts last night, and the first one that said they were going to get mad and come after me. And when I checked their channel out, aside from the cartoons, I think there was one video of a classroom in Africa. Some person walking around the classroom with a camera as school people were in the room, and it's like a bit random, right? Was the account newish? I think it was. You could say, oh, these waves of like the Jesus account, the other angel accounts coming on in could have been created by Salty Pancakes himself or one of his side men, right-hand man, second lieutenant, I don't know, whatever you call them, you know, by them. But to have videos already on the channel of a different theme and nature, I don't think there's a link there. Though one account that did show up last night was called, I think, Salty Pancakes Always Wins, or Salty Always Wins. And I don't think that was done as a direct response by that other account with the African video. I think that's a completely different person, right? And you might say, well, how do you know that? Because of the original account that showed up in the first place that was saying random stuff. They had a short video on their channel and it didn't sound like Pancakes. You know, Pancakes is more like this.
Yeah, man, I just think there's started some conspiracies, man. You know, they're trying to shut me down. My third channel's been taken down as well. I just cannot take this. I cannot take this petty-ass drama.
That's what it sounds like. As for this video, it was more like, hello, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm trying to record a short video. Yes, my voice is a little quiet. Maybe I need to turn the volume up. There's a big difference, okay? Now, will I get retaliation for doing that accent in that situation? No, because I'm literally depicting what happened and, you know, disassociating, showing there's a difference between the two accounts, completely different people doing that, so then people don't start thinking, oh, there's a link and then it links to pancakes, because not everything revolves around pancakes or Jim Terry or some of the other people. It doesn't always revolve around them. It's external stuff as well going on in the background, unrelated. And I think that was the case there. There was one time though in the past when I did do an African variation impression. It led to one person getting triggered to the point where they harassed me for a couple of months. They slandered my name a lot. They used videos, pics of me without my consent, and they also challenged me to a boxing match, all because I did an African impression and they didn't like it. And I rejected them as a friend, supposedly, even though they never offered or said anything about that to begin with. That's what we're dealing with, the degeneracy when it comes to certain people out there of maybe a younger age range bracket, right? That's what I mean, good and bad. One of those things. As for the account at the time, they were known as Bepo Purple, B-E-P-O space purple. But it was resolved in the end, though with time, more degenerates have come. As said, the channel, what's it called now? I actually can't remember the channel. Oh yeah, Privilege. Literally called Privilege. They've used videos, photos of me without my consent, gone against multiple TOS, ban evading, changing their usernames, once known as Bird Guts, changed to Privilege, and then in between probably changed to another name as well. They're a bit of a waste of space, okay? They're still out there. Anyway, let's put that aside. Yeah, fake accounts, dodgy accounts showing up last night, but they eased off. The Salty Pancakes account showed up. I guess it's a new one that's been set up by Pancakes himself. Did anyone see it? It had the same profile logo picture of the salt thing, but in the colour black this time. Why did it show up? It's probably because mainly the chat was talking about him, right? I in the video itself, the pre-recorded one, I just said, oh, Pancakes, I've heard, or did his channel get deleted again? And some people said yes, and then that was it of the conversation, but it continued in the chat. So I guess maybe subconsciously it summoned Pancakes, or maybe someone in the chat in the background, lurking, right? With those observational, those little scout op, spec op, nighttime op missions of spying. Who knows what's going on? Zero Dark 30, probably not quite to that extent. But yeah, and then they just tell others and then others come on in. Yeah, I get that. I mean, supposedly it's happened where whenever you say Mr. X, Mr. X, Mr. X, Mr. X, he'll be summoned and will appear out of nowhere in the chat. That's just what happens. And then because there's people in the chat right now, naughty little individuals. Yeah, you in the background, I see you. And then they like reach out to that person and then the person comes on in. So there's that. So put aside saying Bloody Mary 3 times in the mirror. It's all about saying, I know, floppy, soggy 3 times. It'll appear. Whiny, 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 whiny. And then you know who shows up. I think we've learned it now. All under control. Let's just return back to those comments and finish it off. Here we are. Speaking of that matter and stuff, look, you got the comments on here by Jesus. Jesus says, a good life chat, a good life chat. I think he means live. So even Jesus approves of my videos. Praise the Lord. And I think it's time right now, okay? Everybody stand up. Yeah. Everybody in the chat. Everybody in the background. Stand up. Get your dogs, get your cats to stand up as well on 2 legs or something. Put your hand across your chest so you're gripping your heart and begin the custom US We the People national anthem. In the name of Jesus, in the name of Jesus, in the name of Tyler Feller, also known as Tyler Feller for the homegirl, Valley Girls. Tyler, oh my God, Tyler, I need to get your number. You never gave it to me. My God, petty ass bitch. In the name of all of that and the custom US anthem, I think it's time to go. Amazing Jesus, bless me. I beg for blessings every day. If not, I will get my Excel whip out and you will realize the wrath. Wow. Oh my God, I'm getting really emotional right now. Oh my God, I need a tissue. Anyway, bless you. Let's move on. There we go. Like the comment for good luck. One of those dodgy Instagram posts like they always do that. Christy B saying, I wasn't able to watch the premiere yesterday. Watching now, very interesting. Thank you, Refi. Do you all think Brenner will tell one day where Dylan is? Personally, what I think is that because Candice Cooley and Justin Rounds have rejected those plea deals and rejected getting help from Brenner, as we've heard previous, because Candice Cooley and Justin feel that they're confident enough that they can find Dylan without Brenner's help, I think that could backfire. Because Brenner has been rejected in a sense, his plea being rejected too, maybe he might become a bit awkward. But when the time does come, or if the time does come where the family can't locate Dylan and they've got to resort on going back to Brenner to try and sort some deal out. I know the family aren't in control of the deal itself, nor Brenner. So one's in between, right? Though, in a way, Brenner does have the final say in which does he say anything, reveal location or not. And I feel down the line, he's probably less likely to because of stubbornness, awkwardness. You've rejected me at the start. I'm not going to tell you now. It was a one-time offer. That's what I think. Let me know your thoughts in the chat. We'll do a poll right now. Aside from the poll rating the US custom national anthem, whether it should become that or not, that's a different story. But this poll can be about, do you think Brenner is likely to talk at a later point down the line if the family reach back out because they can't find Dylan themselves? Or do you think Brenner may keep quiet as time goes on, that the offers have expired by now? Just make sure to vote. I'll provide some voting options which are reasonable, easy to understand. Okay, let's move on. Jacqueline Rampley. Hi, Raffies. Oh God, Raffies. Fell asleep and missed a premiere. Hadn't even had a drink. I'll catch up now. Looking forward to this one. Well, you probably need a drink after the previous video or the one before that, right? And you probably need another drink when it comes to the next video, whenever that is, when it gets dodgy again. What else do we have? Jacqueline saying Brenner couldn't have disposed of Dylan's phone at around 2:50 p.m, then got back to his place or grain shed to get picked up and driven away by 3 p.m. I can't see that fitting together. Yeah, I agree with what you say. So either it's one or the other. Either the 2:50 p.m. timestamp is 100% true, or the 3 p.m. one to do with Brenner getting picked up is true. They can't follow one after another because it just doesn't quite fit in. The only alternative you could suggest is at 2:51 p.m, Brenner at the pond, the phone's thrown into the pond of Lucin, and then Don comes down to the pond at 3 p.m. to pick up Brenner. But it's not that far away, is it? Is Brenner that lazy to walk like a mile or under? I don't know. Is Brenner lazy enough to do that? I'm not quite sure, but maybe you know. But all I would say at the end of the day, you got Don Hately saying, well, Don Hately providing the 3 p.m. timestamp, and he's done a lie detector as well. He's passed it, but that doesn't mean to say it correlates to a question about the 3 p.m. timestamp. People are just using it as a comparison to say, well, he passed the lie detector test, whatever that was to do about, whatever questions were fired off there, stating that, well, if he passed it, then he must be truthful in what he says. But as we've heard with time, you don't have to be a good person to pass a lie detector test. You could be a bad person, you could be corrupt, you could be dodgy, but just because of your stability, I guess how you feel at the time, if you're calm, you can kind of get away with it and lie and be successful at it, right? That's why people say the polygraph test aren't always the most accurate of things, right? You need a bit more than that, which I can understand. So you've either got that to believe in, or from what Justin Rounds, Candice Cooley have said, although yes, they have got some things wrong at time, mainly Candice Cooley, not Justin Rounds, right? So that could be a bit of a reasoning scale thing there to take in mind. But the family in not in possession of the phone, but cloning the phone, knowing about the timestamps early on, I guess. If that's been passed from the police to them, or they found it themselves, then technically you'd believe in that, right? So which one's true? Don Hately's timestamp, or the timestamp provided by Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds? Let me know your thoughts in the chat. I could have done it as a poll, but it's a little bit vague. People might not truly understand it. And we've already got a poll ongoing. Don't want to clog things up, you know. We don't want to fill up the drains because, you know, at the moment, maybe Graham, but more so Dale. Goddamn Dale. Having a few fantasies about drains and gloves. Anyway, let's move on. Okay, so that's it for the comments. Okay. Right, so I think we are edging ever closer to this map analysis breakdown, but I think to begin with of this video, it is worth mentioning those key points from last night to try and make sense of that weird, confusing stuff and accounts that showed up. If there was any correlation or link, if anyone can do a deep dive into that stuff and provide an update down below or elsewhere, feel free to do so. I think one other thing to highlight before we move on any further, and maybe by now people have catched on, I bet people in the chat are wondering, Raf, what the hell is that in the background over your shoulder? Is it some kind of abstract art, or was it stolen from Bellavy's toy collection? What is going on? Well, I can explain. It wasn't from Bellavy's toy collection. It was actually from Miss T's toy collection. I'm only joking. Basically, I wanted to experiment, okay? Not really tried it before. I thought it was worth giving it a go. Recently with Maria Mojano and her presence, her influence, her kitty cat behaviour, right? Her giving all the ideas and suggestions, I thought I'd be inspired by Maria and give it a try, okay? I don't know if it's got any correlation with that happy hump day on a Wednesday. Not quite sure, but I'll go and retrieve it right now and then I can show it right up to the camera in your face and then you can, you know, get a good grip of things, okay? Just give me a second. Oh, and the other reason is, the reason why I'm going to get it now without any edits or jump cuts, so then people can't come out with conspiracies and say, oh, it's faked or it's staged, right? You get me, whatever. We just firmly grasp it Whoa, there we go. Now the problem is, it's a little bit soggy, okay? It's a little bit moist in some areas. But basically, what was on table was this, okay? I'm trying to hold it in the same position as it was on the table. That's all it is. They do separate. One's already been eaten, okay? Apple and a banana, okay? That's simple. And this time round, for once, the banana is real. It is a real banana, and this is a real apple. You might think these are very small, but I do prefer small apples. I don't like big apples in my mouth, okay? Smaller is better, and it's not as filling, right? So with Maria's advice recently, talking about all these veggies and vegetables, don't worry, I'm not an idiot, okay? It's all under control here. I know exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, whatever. But just like healthy related foods, okay? Maria said she was going to cut them up into tiny pieces so I wouldn't choke on them, okay? So I guess these like examples of some food. I know some people are in the chat saying, oh my God, what are you talking about? This is not a vegetable. My God, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. You know, it goes into the mouth. Well, not completely, okay? I mean, what's this, like some kind of ASMR muck? What is, do you know what the cringiest word that? Mukbang. What the fuck? Who decided to call it that? Where you get those people where they sit around a table with a camera shoved up against the face, the microphone as well, awkward silence, wearing the black latex gloves. You heard that right, Dale. Don't get too turned on by it. Eating fishy food, seafoods, ramming it in the mouth, big portions, all the crunching and the squishy, moist sounds and everything like that. It's a weird, and they call it mukbang. Now, when I heard of mukbang in the past, I thought it was some kind of dodgy activity, to be honest. But, you know, it sounds dodgy, the word, right? I cringe at the word. It's the first time I've actually said it out verbally, right? So yeah, we're not going to be doing that today. And even if I did decide to eat this, that would be very dodgy. It would probably be one of the gayest moments, right? We're not going down that route, okay? This banana is a little bit bent, but I am not, okay? Hopefully the people in the background or the dark audience aren't getting too excited where it ends up like this. Whoa, shot right up. Calm down. Maintain a level of innocence, because at the end of the day, I do have standards, although that might be hard to believe. Where we go. But I think before we go any further, right now, I do want to splash my water upon your face, but the problem is the phone will not be too happy with it because of the microphone. It crackles and pops when water, you know, lands on it. We got the water here, we got the blessings, it's filled right to the top, and you know what that means. When the blessings are filled to the top, it's about to explode. The train is plowing on through, man. Yeah, the choo-choo train. It's all about that, man. There we go. What can go wrong now? I don't know. But yeah, welcome. If you have just joined, if you're catching up right now, what we are going to do right here, right now, is the new map analysis breakdown to do with the 28th of May and maybe onwards, such as the 29th and maybe a bit later on, depending, okay? There's no particular date, to do with a location of interest, to do with the pivot. You might wonder which one. Well, I can explain it more on the maps. Brief introduction to do with it. And it's very fitting, perfect timing to also present to you boots on ground footage of the area as well, so you're really familiar with it. Credit to Ty Corbin for the footage. Okay, I'll provide a link down below so you can watch his video, his channel, and check it all out, okay? Introduction first, followed by video, followed by analysis. Let's go. Right, so here is the satellite imagery within a focused area today in Lucin. Centre of the screen, although hard to see, we do have the Grainshed property nearby to the railroad tracks, and then where the red marker is, the pivot in question, okay? And I will really explain it to the best of my abilities shortly, but I think it's appropriate to show what it looks like on ground level, right, to begin with, and then follow on with a backstory, because as I said at the start of this video, we do have a couple of add-on pieces of information provided by Weezer, Montello Local, who's heard about the stuff over time, right? So we best take a look at that as well. As for what we see on screen right now, brief introduction. We've got the grain shed property here, of course. As for the markers, this yellow one isn't that significant. I just put it there to roughly measure the distance from grain shed to pivot, okay? Now, ideally, if you were gonna get there via a vehicle, you'd most likely take a road. Driving over the railroad tracks is not practical in most situations, unless you get a crossing, which is further up that way nearer to the pond. The orange line is like a route to the place. We can get into that closer afterwards. A few additional markers of interest which may catch your attention, but that will link in and explain more with Weezer's comments. As for the pivot down here, we have looked at it in the past, but we've not really talked much about it, right? When you zoom in closer, take in mind this is 2019 satellite imagery. As for 2023 satellite imagery, the two trailers, what you see there, are no longer present. As for like the farming equipment and trailers, do remain as they are, not really changed. The pivot itself is still present in 2023, if you're wondering. Not as good condition, though, let's say. Not as good condition. As another heads up, a quick pointer, just in case anyone is confused, what we see on screen is not Dylan Round's pivot, okay? Nor is it owned by Dylan Rounds, like if you had an additional one. This is not Dylan Round's property. Dylan Rounds does not own this land, okay? Does that make sense? So, with that being said, I think it's time to literally zoom on in to this pivot, this land, to show from the point of view of Ty Corbin walking across it in recent time of how it actually looks present day. Let's begin.
So this is a location. It's not very far from the grain shed. I'm just going to put it this way. I'm not going to give any directions or say anything, but the grain shed's that way about 1.5 miles. All three people that I know of that people have suspected in this, KW, JB, and DH, all three know about this farm. They all three have been over here before, and to my knowledge, this farm has never been searched. And I've been out here once earlier, before the snow came.
So after seeing that footage, let me know your thoughts in the comment section. What do you think about it, right? The area, the probability Dylan could be there, or some interest of evidence, new leads, let me know. We could even do a poll right now as we do go on through this video. How significant is this area? Do you feel that this area needs to be searched? Yes, no, it's already been searched. Or if there's another option, it's already been searched, but it needs double checking. Make sure to vote right now. So what we have on screen is the comments previous by Weezer. We're going to read through them again so we can truly understand and analyse these points of information, because it just links really well with what we're talking about literally today, this pivot, and the footage provided by Ty Corbin as well. So Weezer says, Don was working the pivot just north of the tracks and grain shed last summer, 2022. Everyone at first thought that was Dylan's pivot and not too far from Ivo. Ivo Zadowski being the guy at Lucin Airport, living there. The person that owned that pivot planted several different types of seed to see if any would grow due to the high salt in the water. In the past, nothing has really worked because once the crop starts growing, the salt dries on the leaves and kills it all. The owner of that property was out just a couple of weeks before Dylan disappeared. He brought several different types of seeds to test and left Don Hately in charge of taking care of it before Don disappeared in, I think, around August. I asked him if any of the seed had grown. Don said no, it had all died. So that's very interesting. And we've got another comment as well which adds on, but let's just analyse what we've got on screen to begin with, okay? So, Don working on that pivot last summer. As of speaking right now, last summer being in 2022, summertime, roundabout when Dylan went missing, right? Is that correct in saying? Kind of like round then. So Don being in this area, an area where maybe Dylan could have been taken, but Don was told by the owner to look after the area. Although Don is retired, as Candice Cooley has stated, whether that's truly correct or not, Don still helps out. Just like how Don helped out Dylan Rounds in the past with some of the farm work before that dispute and parting ways. So we know after that, Don did go on to do other things, other roles and responsibilities, such as the pivot, okay? As for levels of care, that has been questioned. And it kind of makes a bit more sense now. People may read this and think, so what, we've heard it before, but there's a bit more clarity behind it, because in the past, I think it might have been on No Thanks channel, maybe Tyler Feller, maybe Zavgirl, maybe Spread About, where they kept referring to Don Hately at the pivot, should have been looking after it, but ignored it as something, and then the crops went to shit. You know, it needed to be maintained, but it wasn't. But I was confused at the time because I was like, are we talking about Dylan's pivot or a different one? And I think this kind of provides a bit more context and backstory behind which pivot, not Dylan's, but the pivot north of the grain shed over the railroad tracks. Okay. What I do want to say, though, is there was another point mentioned in the past about Don Hately was supposed to be looking after Dylan's pivot. Is that true? Was Don supposed to be looking after two different pivots almost at the same time? Can anyone confirm that? Bit of an awkward situation. Maybe. And I did hear some talk in the past that Don Hately ignored fixing or maintaining Dylan's pivot, which kept leaking over time, so that caused issues in itself. At the end of the day, is it Don's responsibility to ultimately look after it and maintain? It's more of a favour, isn't it? Does that have anything to do with Dylan's disappearance? All I would say is the level or lack of care could reveal something behind it. Kind of like with the initial search when Karen contacted Don to go out looking for Dylan, and supposedly Brenner was supposed to as well, but it's been worded previous that both of them, Candice Cooley saying they didn't go out and search, they ignored, they didn't bother. But then you got Ty Corbin saying Don did go out and he showed his emotions to Ty when he couldn't find him, but Brenner did nothing. And then other people in the background are just confused overall as to who really went out there. Candice Cooley herself believes no one did, not Don, not Brenner at the time, because there was no footprints in the ground. And as we've learned over time, the weather, Saturday, raining hellaciously in the early hours of the morning, and supposedly Sunday too. So the ground would have been moist in between that period, and it was the Sunday, the 29th of May, when Don was supposed to go out with Brenner searching for Dylan, right? So a bit of context there. As though for the pivot discussion to do with Dylan's pivot, you know, it would have needed to be maintained, right, because of the season, the timing of everything, but because Dylan's not around, someone else has to do it. But if it was Don's responsibility, then why? Just because local in the area, family friend in a way, unlike Brenner, supposedly. That could be the case. But what it provides, when you have access and you have permission to these areas, whether it be Dylan's pivot or that external owner of the other pivot north of the grain shed, is opportunity, land and space to operate in. Sure, you're supposed to follow a brief. You're supposed to get this done and that done, complete the task and maintain it. But in between, it could be used for other things in between, right? You never know. And as we heard in that video by Ty Corbin saying that both Kurt Wadsworth, Don Hately and Jim Brenner have been to this area, the one north of the Grangeshed property, that pivot. Now, Ty Corbin abbreviated the names, so if you need an explanation very quick, KW means Kurt Wadsworth, JB means Jim Brenner, also known as James Brenner, and DH means Don Hately. Okay? All three individuals that have been talked about extensively within the Dylan Rouse case, JB being the one charged with Dylan's death as well as the desecration, Kurt Wadsworth in the shadows when it comes to suspicion by the family, but by other people suspicious of Kurt. And as for Don Hately, another individual shadowed or in the shadows as described by the family, because they don't really look at him, but the audience do. A bit more mystery behind him because he has moved away with time. So that's the situation. If these key individuals, people of interest, have been to the area at any point in time and have had access as well, with that knowledge, that muscle memory of, look what we have here, look at all this land, you know, it's not truly in use because it's a bit of a failure when it comes to the experimentation of planting the seeds. Maybe the owner will eventually give up because it's just fighting a losing battle, so it'll be no longer in use, and maybe we can like dig it up, maybe we can start burying stuff underneath, right? Possibility it's within the area as well, right? If you take in mind the directions, it does incorporate the wash driving through it to an extent. What I want to say right now, and I probably should have said it earlier, someone like Quinton may come in and say, why are you covering this video? This is irrelevant. It's at the wash. It's all about the wash. All I will say is we need to spread awareness and discussions on this area because we haven't done before. So tie up stuff there and maybe reinforce it. And also, we can take a look at the wash, right? I have referred to it in the past, but we can take a deeper look and go on from there, you know? But we need to do it in a certain order. And as well, with certain people all over the place saying, I believe it's this, I believe it's that, I believe Dylan could be here, it's there, it's everywhere, whatever. And they end up being wrong. And that's like how we're seeing with information, following the facts, following the story, that's switched and changed with time. So what that's provided is the opportunity to think for yourself and question. So when the main narrative is, this is what we're dealing with, and here's the location, you don't have to truly believe in it. You can take your own path and think elsewhere, think outside the box. Maybe in other cases you'd be accused of going against the narrative and causing disruption, but because the main story itself has been unstable with time, you have to think for yourself, because if you don't, you're fucked. Okay? So that's what we're demonstrating here, okay? With the balance of looking at other areas too. Anything else here we need to look at? Acknowledging that people did get mixed up with Dylan's pivot. I did as well at a later point, but it was all cleared up, so that's all good. The owner planted several different types of seed, but high salt, the terrain itself. When you say high salt in the water, does that mean the ground is very salty? Like, if the water is coming from the pivot, coming out of that like pipe above, the water that comes out of it that lands on the ground to water the seeds, that water has salt contents. Is that what you're saying? Is that because of the piping going underground where the ground is salty and the water absorbs the salt? Is that correct in saying? Is there a correlation between the ground being salty and the water passing through it? Or the water absorbing the salt at the same time? Just correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not an expert when it comes to farming or any of this, okay? Trying to make sense of it. But it makes sense. Even Candice Cooley, I think, or there was some article somewhere where it said about Dylan, you know, half buying the land with the grandfather and it being quite rough, that people in the past have tried but given up because it was just fighting a losing battle. Yeah, but Dylan wanted to prove to himself that he could do it and make something of the area and of himself. Was it a success? I don't know. Candice Cooley says it was. Other people say it was a disaster. Some say that Dylan caused more disruption to the area than good. So it kind of is mixed there, right? Of course, this pivot, this discussion, this video is not about Dylan's, but it's a pivot at the end of the day in Lucin, same area, same environment, right? It's rough, it's dry, it's salty, right? Just makes me think, if the salty crew were on the land, can they like put their hand down on the ground and like sense and measure the consistency and volume of salt? Did they have that superpower? I don't know. But yeah, anyway, what else do we have here? In the past, nothing really worked because the crop starts growing, the salt dries on the leaves. Oh, so it's, the salt is already in the water once it comes out of the pivot. Okay. And that the owner was out a couple of weeks before Dylan went missing. That's interesting, you know, considering these owners, the parcels of land in the area don't all live in the area. Interesting. Bought several different types of seeds, different types, experimentation. Now, did Dylan do the same thing? Or was Dylan just using the tritium? Did he try any other seeds? I don't know. And Dawn disappeared in August or around August. Okay. Some months passing by since Dylan's disappearance at the time. Okay. I wonder what the ultimate reason was for Don leaving. Like, I just think you've still got Kurt Wadsworth, still in Montello. He's not really escaped that far, has he? He's not really moved. That's good. Chase Venstra, already been taken in, unrelated. Brenner taken in, related. Robert Aviles taken back in, unrelated. Any updates regarding Robert Aviles? Feel free to share them down below. Don Hately moving away. Ivor Zadowski moving away. Ed Harshberger moving away. Is there a correlation between all three of them? I don't know. What's their main reasons behind moving wherever they've gone? That would be interesting to know. And where did they go? Do we really need to do a follow-up on these people? You know? I'm not sure. And will the show back up? Maybe some. Okay. I think we've analysed this enough. Let's move on to the next comment. Following on, Weezer says, he said, no, it had all dried. Oh, it had all died. Don Haley saying that. So if it's died, is that because Don was reckless, lazy, not looking after it? Or was there nothing he could do about it? You know? And, you know, did Don move his trailer from his normal spot all the way down to this pivot so he's literally staying on site? I don't know. Unfortunately, we don't have satellite imagery relevant to the time of when Don was present. But with it not being too far away from the areas, you'd probably still take a vehicle down to it, right? It does actually make sense. Let's just move on anyway. Weezer says, I think that pivot also needs to be checked thoroughly because it is right across the tracks from where the horse prints were. That is where Don spent a lot of the summer. Okay. I have brought that to the attention of Candice Cooley, and I have basically been blown off. Not in that way. Basically blown off, meaning ignored. It's been brushed off. Oh, it's irrelevant in the eyes of Candice Cooley. The property owner has said check the property. So he's given the heads up. He has no issues with that. He lives out of state. Sadly, he has been diagnosed with, okay, and as a very short time, it's kind of, he had since ended up selling the property, but I know the new owners and they would have absolutely no problem with LE searching it. Okay, so as for access, the positive is, most likely there's a level of leniency. I mean, the fact that Ty Corbin was able to get onto the land, very recent, must mean the owners are relatively loose about it. Ty Corbin probably saying, hey, can I come onto the land? I need to try and find Dylan, or like document, search in general. And they're like, sure, go ahead. Okay, that's good. But what the problem is trying to get the right people, the authorities, down to it. If Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds had trouble with the LE back then, it'd probably be just as troublesome now. What we've got to take in mind that external people may have had it maybe harder. Could you agree with that? Let's try and think of this. Out of all the people that have reached out to the LE, who's been most successful in getting a response? Lance Kelly, up to a certain point. Walt and Michelle, the witnesses on the 28th of May 2022, they contacted the LE supposedly several times, but was ignored about that truck, witnessing it leaving the Grangeshed property, relevant on the day of Dylan's disappearance and death. That was blown off as well. That's disappointing. What else was there? Lance Kelly maybe reporting to the LE in more recent time about the bra shed and not getting a response back. Maybe. Was there another one though? I swear there was another one. No, I can't think of it. Anyway. Well, actually, no. Brenner's burnt down trailer in Montello, away from Lucin. Lance Kelly reported it in. Maybe Ty Corbin did as well. And eventually the attention was brought to the place and the police went down to take a look and investigate. So that was a success at least. But is that just because it was to do with Brenner's personal property or past property? So that's the only reason why the police went down. Whereas something like the pivot north of the Grangeshed, although in Lucin, closer and maybe more relevant, because it's owned by a guy who's not even in the area, is it not as relevant? Despite, from the looks of it, persons of interest at a certain point that were down there and present, right? Don Haley in the early days would have been regarded as a person of interest, right? And we did spend summer in the area of that pivot. It's like, well, was there any activity taking place? anything that shouldn't have been happening, right? With Ty Corbyn throwing it in as well, that Brenner knows about the area, familiar, and has been down there. So has Kurt Wadsworth. Whether they be all cooperating with one another, covering each other's backs, assisting, or just one of them at least going down there to dispose of Dylan, maybe. It all comes down to two factors. The question of, has it truly been searched, yes or no? And maybe the poll can, explain that. As I said, make sure to vote. I gave some key options to vote from. Yeah, two main factors. Has it really been searched? That's the first. And the second, trying to actually get in contact with the right people to then begin that investigation down there. Is it too late now? Not really, because obviously it's relevant, still searching for Dylan. If he is buried deep in that ground, or to an extent, I don't think his bones would have been scattered then if he's buried in the ground, and it's provided it's not been dug up by animals, of course. But what about the drones? What about the searches? We can get a lot more into that when we get onto the maps, because it's a bit more visual that, and then I can tell more of the story, right? And I do have some screenshots to share with you a bit later on into the video of Ty's just talk about, right? Because it is better visually. Was there anything I've not read here? Well, actually, Weezer, you say you tried contacting Candice Cooley and she kind of ignored you, played it down. Did you try contacting Justin Rounds? Justin Rounds appears to be easier to talk to from the looks of it. Supposedly, Salty Pancakes and or Kay Lee reached out to Justin Rounds in a phone call recently, and considering the reputation they have in the eyes of the community and Candice Cooley, Justin seemed to be talkative to them, I believe, unless that's all fake. But put that aside, what about other people? Who else has reached out to Justin at a point in time? Lance Kelly, Ty Corbyn, at a time when Candice Cooley didn't like those two. But Justin did acknowledge them and respond, right? So if you can talk to someone who's a bit more understanding, not as much conflict, right? Did you try telling Justin about this pivot and it needed to be searched? Let me know your thoughts. Like, whether it was a pivot, it might have been a pivot reference mentioned in the past, and I don't know if it ties in with Justin's mini meltdown. You remember that time on the Facebook page where Justin said, Don Hately, and Brenner, you're a dead man walking. Don Hately, you fat fuck, quoted by him, not me. Bring you and your gay son out to the main line. Is the main line related to a pivot of some sort? If so, I wonder what pivot Justin was referring to. Meet me at Dylan's pivot. We need to talk this out or fight. Or meet me at the pivot north of the grain shed. We need to discuss this. There was a trigger to begin with for Justin to snap at the time or just get angry. And there must have been also a subconscious thought as for the location. Meet me here, this specific spot. Is the specific spot related to where Don Hately was at a time previous, which he managed to fail in handling it, such as Dylan's pivot, so it leaking? Or has it got something to do with the main line, the pivot, north of the grain shed property, because the seeds died and maybe Don wasn't really looking after them? Does anyone know? Is there any correlation, any links whatsoever? Okay. We are getting a bit deep, but it's all to do with a singular area or two, so we're not going to drift too far away. That's the whole point of these focused videos, of an area or an event, right? But yeah, Weezer, did you try reaching out to the LE, Justin, anyone else in between? Has anyone else done so? But now, let's get onto the photos. So there might be a little small, the photos, but don't worry, we will zoom on in. That's just because Ty Corbin recorded vertical aspect ratio, not horizontal, which would have been more ideal. What you see here is, at the moment, Ty Corbin turns back saying, over that way, or roughly, is grain shed. And basically it can be explained. What we see there, those little items, and that power line is what we're seeing on Google Earth satellite imagery. And I can point it back out when we do refer back to the satellite imagery, okay? I believe it's more to the right. So right of those objects will be those like farming equipment and trailers, what I pointed out, lined up near those white trailers, okay, which probably no longer present of today, hence the 2023 imagery, okay? But it's just showing what's present. Zoom on here. This was kind of interesting, right? As for the other areas, maybe it's hard to see. It's quite thick, the vegetation, quite bushy. Some of the objects have been obscured by the vegetation growing with time because it's not really managed, is it? Is all that vegetation like natural? Likely, yes, becoming overgrown. Is it to do with the seeds? No, because Don said they died, so it's just natural sage, brush, bush, vegetation, plants growing and all that shit in between, right? But the one thing that stands out to me is, why is this area so flat? Can you see? Why is this area different in colour and height compared to what we see spread about in the distance and more to the left-hand side? Can anyone explain that? And Ty did pan around looking the other way and it did remain flat, like a vehicle, some kind of equipment, flattening the ground down, making it more compact, or maybe literally cutting the vegetation away to smoothen the ground out. Is that really the case? The only reason why it's relatively important, this, is because if this is signs, levels of activity, recent or in the past, to do with Dylan rounds, search and rescue, volunteers, police, then it may debunk that the area has been searched, right? But they took it into consideration at a point and decided to just scour through the area to see if Dylan was in the ground or not. Then you could put the argument across and say, well, maybe Dylan has been searched for in this area by authority, but did they go about the whole radius of the pivot and go further on to the left over that way? We don't have any other images at the moment. You know, there's more to it than this patch on screen all around. So why only this area? So if anyone can clear it up, has this image, has it been searched, the pivot, like just this one area, this one spot, or is it natural? Let me know. Because I feel that even if the area was searched, it probably wasn't searched enough, and that in general it probably needs a double checking, right? If other areas have been double checked, like Lucin Pond, the grain shed property, the dirt mound, etc., then I think the same should apply here as well, don't you think? Let's move on. This is just up close with the pivot, as you can see. Don't know what that is in the distance there, that black thing. It's a bit blurry. But yeah, there's the pivot. Not quite in shot, but the wheels, as you see there, one of them at least, I think it might have been on the right-hand side one, Ty Corbin described as not functional, the wheels sunk into the ground. Why would they sink into the ground? Maybe the weight of them, deflating possibly, the weather itself, the ground becoming maybe very soft and wet, and with the wheels remaining stationary, sinking that way. Then when the ground hardens, that's how they get stuck within, possibly. Because obviously, if you got a functioning pivot, is it always going around all the time, or is it just every now and then? Let me know. But yeah, you just like look at the ground, it does look very dry. And even here, where it appears very patchy and bare, doesn't mean to say it's been searched, because it doesn't look like it's been searched. You don't really see the disturbance. It was only this one where it seemed there was more disturbance because of the scale of it, the surface area, and it looked more consistent, the ground, you know, in some of the areas. Is there any tyre marks, track marks? No, I can't see them. There was an area, and I don't know if Ty Corbin showed it in the video, it looked like there was a dirt road which actually passed right through the pivot. You'll probably see it more on the satellite imagery, but we'll get to that a bit later. What's that brown stuff there? Is that brown stuff shit? Or is it rust? Anyone know? Because there is some like brown marks on the satellite imagery spread about, but I don't know if it's any correlation or not. I've also seen a few brown marks near the grain shed property as well. There you go, that's just like another angle of the pivot, as you see, looking all the way down. I mean, if you were on ground level, this almost looks identical to Dylan Round's TikTok video when he was at the pivot, but Dylan was at his own pivot on the farm. You know, if the pivots are kind of close by to one another, in the open, in the desert, same state, etc., it might end up all looking the same in a way, right? And especially the ground as well. And that ground does look a bit rough and dry and salty, but I could be wrong. Yeah, I mean, you see the amount of surface area, the scale of it, which needs to be or could be searched. Would it take a long time? Questionable, debatable. I think if you've got the right equipment, you could speed the process up. Like, quick question I have. You remember when they were using the drones, the full spectral drone, which would check for soil disturbance, right? Was that drone ever used in this area, or did they not go that far out? Was the drone only used at the wash, at the grain shed property, Dylan's farm, and that was about it? Does anyone know? I think that could be helpful. Any more images? Yeah, I think this was like the final one. So once again, you see where it's patchy and bare, the areas. Pretty hard, the ground, cracked as well, almost like a drought, very dry, not much going on, not much hope. And obviously the ground is harder, probably harder to dig as well if you're going to plant some seeds too, but maybe the farming equipment, a bit more heavy duty, can make up for it. Is this pivot bigger than Dylan Round's pivot? Can anyone confirm that? Yeah. I think what we'll do now is probably move on to the satellite imagery and just look deeper into the way I've marked it and mapped it and try and tell the story, the possibilities of how it could have come about if in relation to the desecration of Dylan. So, zooming on back out, hopefully you liked the transition, right? I don't know if anyone picks up on it, but what I wanted to try and do was like a GTA 5 loading screen when you load up the multiplayer and it transitions into from the satellite imagery into real-time ground footage, you know, kind of like that. But, you know, providing satellite imagery as well as boots on ground complements each other and provides a deeper understanding and depth layers to the area, right? As well as the photos talking about that. Because when telling a story or questioning things, if you've got the images on screen, you can set the scene a lot clearer and just better in general. So where do we begin, right? Well, we got the marker saying about Don working here, summer of 2022, spent a fair bit of time down here. And you know, if someone spends a fair bit of time down there, they must be busy for a reason. whether it be directly because of the whole seeding, looking after it, maintaining the pivot, or if it be scouting the area out, doing a few other tasks in between, such as burying Dylan, right? I mean, ultimately, because of the pivot, the sheer scale of it, the land, you get a drone over it, check for soil disturbance, maybe it would show. What I do want to say very quickly, I think it was Weezer talking about like a grave, the ground settling over time. If the ground settles over time, then it's no longer disturbed, right? It was once disturbed, but the ground has resettled. If that's ultimately the case, does that mean there is an expiry date of how useful the drones are when used? Like, even though you wouldn't, because it'd be a bit weird and inappropriate, but if you got a drone over that grave, Weezer, at the time of during the burial, the drone would depict soil disturbance, right? Because it's been recent. But if you're saying that the ground has settled over time, if you got a drone back out there at a later point, would that drone detect the soil disturbance or not anymore? Can anyone answer that? Because I think it's very important. Because if that really was the case, then as time goes on, it becomes increasingly difficult trying to look for Dylan. If the whole theme is Dylan is buried somewhere and there's a level of soil disturbance, if that goes away with time, then it's just going to get very problematic, right? A race against time, literally. If anyone can clear that big important question by me, feel free to do so. But more so in this pivot area, right? We could measure the distance right now. Very, very, very rough, okay? Because you can't just go in a straight line or a diagonal line. Here, so from the grain shed property to about the pivot, it's about 1.83 miles, okay? But that's not practical. As for an ideal route, I've highlighted it in orange as a way they could have gone, whether it be Don, Brenner, or Kurt Wadsworth. In this case, I've done it as if it was Brenner. But if someone came down to help Brenner, then they could still follow the same pathway, okay? So ultimately, this could apply on the 28th, but it could also apply on the 29th, right? Could it apply any later than that? Maybe if there was a form of desecration in which Dylan was dug back up and then buried elsewhere. That's what I would say, okay? So, I think the easiest way to do it on a vague scale, so we're not getting too specific with dates, is 28th, Dylan, the day he's murdered, at least. Desecration taking place seems to be the case, right? At what point would Brenner act upon it, roughly speaking? If it was on the 28th, what time scale are we thinking? Well, I'd probably say after 8:23 a.m. Before that followed the time of Dylan getting there, making the calls, getting down to the grain shed property, then being taken out, then followed by Dylan's phone in Brenner's trailer, 7:27 a.m. after the death, etc. Then 7:43 a.m. leaving the area to go down to Dylan's farm to do whatever or to get whatever, coming back at 8:23 a.m. and then that till 2:51 p.m. Fair few hours in between, right? So within those hours, Brenner or someone else or tagging along could have driven down to the pivot. That's what I'm thinking. And I'm going to roughly revolve this depiction around that event that day, right? Maybe it can apply on a different day as well, but Just keeping it somewhat relevant and fresh, right? 8:23 a.m. Brenner on site, grain shed property, returning back from the farm. What does he do immediately? Maybe prepares himself, thinks things through. Does he make a call to Kurt or Don about the situation? Maybe not. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. Brenner, with the vehicle he's got, possibly Dylan's vehicle, pickup truck, possibly, getting into it, putting Dylan on the back seat or in the back of the pickup truck, and then driving on. Which way, though? Driving up this way, this road, turning left, going all the way down this dirt road. Apologies about the processing and the loading. In parallel to the wash, to join up with this road here, to drive down and go on and on over the railroad tracks to eventually get to the pivot over that way in the distance. Was that the route taken? Maybe. But with it being described in the past, the back roads. That's what's been mentioned, right? The back roads. And my idea of the back roads, from what I know of, would be considered south, going away from it. Those are the back roads. Going down that way and over there can lead to the bra shed, right? If you don't know what the bra shed is, check my previous video out, or Lance Kelly's footage too. It'll explain it all. So let's just use this route, what I've mapped out anyway. If you have your own routes, you can list them, or if you've got your own distance, you can. I'm sure there'll probably be shortcuts, but I'm just doing pathways which I can visibly see on the maps, okay? So Brenner in a vehicle, likely. Dylan inside of it as well. 8:23 a.m. onwards. Got a time scale from that to 2:51 p.m. Fair bit of time, right? Brenner drives down the road. Does he pass through the gate or turn right here? I'm not quite sure. Maybe he goes right through the gate. Gets to the crossroad here, but before the Sun Tunnels crossroad. Turns right, okay. In the distance on the right hand side, you've got Lucin Hill. Drives down here. Gets to this like crossroad almost. Turns right, which bends and wraps itself around Lucin Hill, as you see on the left hand side there. Hopefully you can see it. And then approaching Lucin Pond, which you'll see here, if I zoom in, this green area, okay? I've got the image flipped, so it's kind of flat, but you get the idea because you've seen it before. Once getting to this point here, it's literally directly up close with the railroad tracks, but you can't just drive over it because of the steepness and the tracks themselves. Sure, you can climb up it if you walk in and go back down onto the other side. Is it legal? I don't know. But just to put in perspective, Ty Corbin and Lance Kelly, when they were searching together in the past, I remember them searching the railroad tracks and they were like driving a vehicle down in parallel to it, parked up on the sides, went down the slope, went back up the slopes and walked over the tracks because it is doable on foot, right? Okay, it's a bit steep, a bit tiring, but it's very doable. Is it safe? For most part of it, probably, if you use common sense and all that. And maybe if you need permission as well. I said I'm not an expert on the area. But yeah, as for a vehicle, it just probably wouldn't be possible. And it probably damaged the vehicle as well. That's why there's a thing called train crossings, and we will see that. So Brenner on the day, 28, turns left here in parallel to the railroad tracks. Follows it up to this bit here and crosses over the railroad tracks as you see the white lines going across the tracks, okay? And then basically it's just simply following the dirt road, which is appearing to be a main one, coming up to the west entrance transcontinental, as you see there. Not far away over here, literally adjacent to it, is a trailer. Where you see that green marker, there is a white trailer, and next to it is like some kind of flat concrete structure. The 2022 and 2023 satellite imagery does show a trailer with like a vehicle and maybe an ATV or a motorbike parked up by the side of it. The confusion is, some say it's Don Haley's place, other people say it's not. Some people say it's the place which is tied with what Lance Kelly documented in a video, other people say it's not. Some people say that Lance Kelly got the trailer mixed up with where Don's place is at, trailer-wise. Bouncy Bounce said that Ty Corbin has no clue where Don's trailer is at, and that when it was pointed out, it was of someone else's. So what I would say, on a serious level, the location of Don's trailer is such a fucking disaster, okay? Smaller levels, but similar to how the Dylan Rounds case has been handled. Going round and round, back and forth, information switching and changing. Some people who know the area better getting mixed up, then other people online appearing as if they know it, but then some don't, and then some are guessing, and then some get it wrong, but then change it, and it's just a big mess at the end of the day. The best and easiest thing to do would say, this is it, these are the coordinates. Not imagery, not photos, not trying to map it out and compare with that to the satellite imagery, just pure, raw, solid coordinates, right? I think Patsy provided in the background, like a photo to do with the parcel of land owned by Don Haley, but they couldn't find the trailer. But then again, with it being 2019 satellite imagery, that might have been the limitation. And the parcel of land was around the Lucin Hill area, which I did point out back there. Lucin Hill being here. Now, I have referred to this area as Don Haley's place of living. More so this area here where you see that like patch where it looks a bit flat, the ground. Now, I did go to 2022, 2023 imagery, and no trailer showed up in the area. Not on this side of Lucin Hill. What about if you go round the back? Round the back is supposedly where the parcel of land is to do with Don Haley. But still can't see any trailers. But what is present is this like pit here, which you can see there's a bit of depth to it. Now, is this the gravel pit? Is this to do with the parcel of land owned by Don Haley, which was a gravel pit in which gravel was taken away or dirt from this area and taken elsewhere to Don's actual trailer to create a pathway, right? Is that the case? As I said, I have looked in the area here, more present day, and could not find the trailer. Take in mind the trailer is still there, or should still be there, but then again, is it really? If you think about it, when Lance Kelly went past that trailer in his footage when going into Lucin and said, there's Don's trailer, but not lived in anymore because he's moved away, you thought, okay, it's abandoned. It will be in the area and it's not going anywhere. But if that turned out not to be Don's trailer and it still hasn't truly been found, then maybe it won't be found, because if Don has moved away, maybe he took his trailer with him. It would be common sense. It would make sense to me, at least. You know, did Dylan do the same thing when Dylan went on to do custom farming? When he went working for other people, did he take his trailer with him or just his pickup truck? Does anyone know? As for Brenner's burnt down trailer, that was left behind because it was a wreckage. You couldn't do much with it, right? Ed Harshberger, wherever he moved on to, did he leave his stuff behind? What about Ivor Zadowski? If he moved away as well, what, he took his plane and truck with him? Or, you know, what? Is the airport locked up now? Can you not get in? Is there any security? You know, all these like little mini questions in between. Can anyone answer them? But anyway, returning back to this area of interest, right? Brenner on the day, going past West Entrance Transcontinental, driving down this dirt road, as you see on screen, highlighted in yellow. You can just about make it out, which does lead directly to the pivot. Get to this crossroad here, and if you can drive straight on down, which literally seems to go right through the pivot, or just turn right here, and then I think there's a gate there, if I'm correct in saying. That does look like a gate. Interesting. So, you know, first of all, you've got to be given permission to get onto the area. Second of all, do you need given an access key? Ty Corbin, when you went to this area, did you have to use a key to access one of the gates, or was it easy just to get into? Let me know. So this was the area, getting through here. You're onto the land, right? Follow this dirt road down. And then you get to this area where the trailers are at, which probably no longer there though, because people have moved on with time. And those pieces of equipment are there too, right? What we see here, those tyres are the same ones what we saw in Ty Corbin's photo. Remember when I said those black tyres are there, and near to it is some other stuff like that? Yeah, maybe the odd tractor was moved, like that one there. Yeah, we saw that tractor in the background of Ty Corbin's footage, and the tyres as well. So Ty Corbin, at that point, probably was somewhere here, on his ground, walking. Which direction? Well, he was walking towards the centre of the pivot, so he's probably here, turned his camera around to show where he parked up, which was on this road here, which comes on in from following that orange line, parking up in this area, Ty Corbin, and then walking onto the pivot, almost in parallel to the main part of the pivot, which goes to the centre. And Ty Corbin was walking up to it. Okay? So there's that. Of course, the sheer size of it. Now, you could say, oh, what portion, what segment of the pivot could Dylan have been buried on? This section? This section? This section? This section? Or that section? What segment? I don't know. But my question would be, if Dylan was buried here, would he have been buried on the outer radius of the land, of the pivot, or on the inner part, closer to the main pivot, the main area, the centre, the epicentre of the crop? Would Dylan have been buried here, or much further out, somewhere like over here? Does anyone know? What's your thoughts about that? The key thing is that if Brenner did drive down to the pivot, right, parked up, what did he use? Like, what equipment? You know, if you've taken just a vehicle down to the area, what equipment do you have with you to then start digging a hole? Because he's not going to be manually doing it, right? And I don't think even Don Haley would either, right? They want to be efficient, and they're probably lazy at the same time. And with the weather, the ground terrain being maybe a little bit hard, but then again, you know, if we're talking about the 28th and it's been raining in the early hours, maybe the ground is a little bit more softer now. But still, it's tiring and time-consuming to be digging a hole on the land of a pivot, right? So you'd need maybe a backhoe, right? Hence that blood that was on a backhoe bucket, supposedly. If that was the case then, what really happened? Were multiple vehicles used? If multiple vehicles were used, then maybe multiple people were involved, right? And that can apply to the wash as well. And I'll just mention it very quickly now. I will probably bring these points back up in a future video, but in case I forget, if it applies to the wash, back near to the grain shed property, that wash, a vehicle like Dylan's pickup truck to drive down into the wash to create track marks, right? But then you still need some equipment to be able to dig away at the wall of the wash, let's say, if that's where Dylan was buried. But how do you get back? You've got to the wash, let's say in Dylan's pickup truck, with Dylan in the truck, but then you need equipment to then dig at the walls. So what, you walk all the way back, you drive all the way back, but then what about Dylan? Do you just dump Dylan in the wash, in the open, drive back quickly, get into the backhoe, drive back? Doesn't seem practical. What would make more sense if you just simply drove to the wash with Dylan in the back and then contacted someone else to go and get the backhoe and drive down, whoever can operate it. Kurt supposedly said that Brenner doesn't know how to operate the backhoe, but I do. So is he dropping himself into that? I don't know. But Kurt comes on down with the backhoe and starts digging away, and then that's where they both assist with each other and get Dylan into the wash wall and then fill it back in, whatever. Do you know what I'm saying? When it comes to disposing of Dylan, you need the appropriate equipment. If Dylan is not on site, then most likely he was taken somewhere else, right? But to be taken somewhere else, you need a vehicle for that to cover the distance. And are you going to be using the same equipment to dispose of Dylan to actually transport Dylan to the area? Yes or no? If not, then you'll be using multiple different vehicles, which would possibly and probably require multiple different people to be operating them at once, same time. And that could apply to both the pivot and the wash. The wash is closer to the grain shed property, but still requires distance, or requires a journey to get down there and get into it, which is more practical with a vehicle. And obviously the dead weight of a body, you'd need a vehicle regardless. The pivot as well, arguably being further away in mileage and distance, but still you need the correct equipment. The only side point would be, was there any equipment on site at the pivot that could have been used to dig up, create a hole in the ground? If that really was the case, then was any of the equipment analysed, taken to the labs? That would be my next question. So have a brief look, right? You got to take in mind that some of the equipment, what you see on screen, is still there to this day, 2023. What do we have here? Like a trailer, some attachments, I think that's a John Deere tractor, that. Is there any equipment here you can identify that could be used and practical in creating a hole in the ground to create a burial site for Dylan? Let me know in the comments. Do we have anything else of interest? Well, here, that appears to be another maybe John Deere tractor, but it looks like something's raised in the air. It could be the scoop of it at the front. But if it's got like a scoop at the front, then could you say that's a backhoe? Depends if it's got that bucket on the back of it, calling it a backhoe, right? I don't know, it doesn't quite show here. What I would say though, at any point in time, was more to do with around the time Dylan went missing and was killed. Was there ever a backhoe at the pivot here on site? Was there ever a backhoe on site here at the pivot at any point in time? Because if so, and Brenner driving down here with Dylan inside, you could have got out and said, oh, there's the backhoe, or there's a vehicle, maybe I can use that then, and started digging away at the ground somewhere here, right? Is that a possibility? Let me know your thoughts, of course. I don't mean to say it's just Brenner If someone else stepped on in, helped, assisted in some way, there's that. It's just trying to be a little bit practical and keep it somewhat relevant with the days of how things followed, right? I think, yeah. Of course, we don't have to just focus on the pivot. There's other areas too, like the wash, but never really went deep with this area. Always briefly referred to it, right? If Weezer is saying that it needs to be searched, Montello local. If Ty Corbyn saying that it needs to be searched because from the looks of it, it's not been, and he's been there himself, what's the harm? Right? It's roughly within the area. You might as well, right? It kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Now, is there any points what we have missed out? Yes. Couple of markers maybe not mentioned. Probably just one of them. No, there's two. Ivo, question mark. This is where Ivo lived at one point, hence why you see his truck there and his plane, but he left from what people have said. If he has left, did he take his truck and plane with him? How did he take both away at the same time? Did he get someone else to come down and transport it away? And as for the actual airport, the airport hangar, was it locked up? Is the workshop empty, or is there stuff going on in there? And as well, has anyone tried breaking into the place as like an opportunistic attempt of trying to steal stuff? Considering the area and people passing through have been known to steal things, like Chase Venstra, like Robert Avila's, you never know, right? And, this is the other thing I just want to just point out very quickly. It's a very random question, this, okay? If at times people have defended Chase Venstra and have defended Robert Avila's and defended this person and Don Haley for, being innocent and making some kind of attempt to look for Dylan or in some way or another, if all these people do have criminal records and some of them or most of them are repeat offenders, then why would they all come together as one to try and help and look for Dylan, a missing person, when they commit crimes themselves? Is there like a certain cut-off point in the mindset of some of those guys where, stealing is okay in their mindset, physicality, punching is okay, stalking, harassment is okay to them, but anything that involves killing someone, oh no, that's too far, we won't allow that? Does that make any sense? Kind of like, when you get prisons and the prisoners within, all the bad stuff they've done, extreme, dark, evil, nasty, gory, extensive. And yet all those prisoners seem to agree on one thing, that they dislike those type of people that commit crimes against younger people. Where there's a bit of a consensus. Despite them all being bad and doing bad things, there's like a baseline of and a boundary of what you shouldn't cross over or commit, and if you do, then everyone else gathers together in support and goes against you. Does that apply on the outside as well, with criminals, past criminals, reoffenders within the Lucin, Montello area? Can anyone confirm that? Does make you think. Yeah, there's Ivo in question. Anything else? The horse tracks. I couldn't find a horse emoji to pinpoint, so I just used a person trekking. Now, this is the thing. Is the precise coordinates, precise distance of where the horse tracks were at? I feel like I may have covered it in a past video, but it was some time ago when Candice Cooley referred to it in the East Idaho News Channel interview, which was a while ago as well. Okay? Saying how there was horse tracks north of the grain shed property, as if Brenner walked his horse, and I think this was described by Candice Cooley, up to the railroad tracks, that Brenner walked his horse up this way, north, up to a certain point, maybe near to the railroad tracks, and like they parted ways. The horse went in one direction, Brenner went in the other. That's how Candice Cooley worded it. If that was the case, what is the point of that? Why would Brenner walk his horse? Well, first of all, I can understand why he would walk his horse, because the way Brenner is, bit wonky, maybe a bit unstable on a horse, and it might be a bit of a rough ride for him. You might get arse ache, right? And maybe the horse doesn't want to be ridden either. But yeah, you'd walk your horse, maybe because the horse is used for something, right? Would it be to dispose of Dylan? I mean, could Dylan have been slumped over the back of the horse as Brenner walked it down to this area, what we see on the screen, the purple marker, maybe? It would explain the horse tracks coming up to it. Could the horse have been carrying other stuff, tools, equipment? Maybe, but there'd be limitations, right? Because the horse can only take a certain load and weight. Yeah. So, upon getting up to this point, what happened? What really happened? The horse walked one way, Brenner said goodbye, and it was like Fast and Furious as Paul Walker drives down one road and Vin Diesel drives down the other as they part ways. I don't think so. Do you think there's a possibility that Brenner walked his horse down into the wash area to then dispose of Dylan? Or do you think Brenner walked his horse to the pivot over there? I can't imagine it because of the distance. This may be where we can start debunking certain ideas, right? Number one, let's measure the distance. Just to take in mind how long it would take, well, how far it is really. It's a little bit laggy, you little bastard. Anyway, this is going from Grainshed property if you were Brenner, I guess, and you planned on going to the pivot area. Kind of gone a bit off, a bit wonky, but it's fine. Here. Crossing over the railroad tracks, going past a transcontinental whatever. There. It's a little bit rough, but it's better than nothing, right? Getting to here. And getting right on in. You know, if we really wanted to round it up, about 10 miles. That's a fair bit of distance, right? 10 miles. But in a vehicle, still doable. The question I ask you, would Brenner truly cover 10 miles on foot walking a horse? Probably not. Would Brenner be the horse whisperer and tell the horse to walk on for 10 miles in that direction like a sat-nav, so then the horse can then bury Dylan himself? Probably not. If we interviewed the horse, we'd probably get a better answer, but it's just not possible, of course, because it's passed away. But 10 miles in a vehicle, doable. But it still leaves that question open. What about the additional equipment needed to dig a hole to bury Dylan? Is the correct appropriate equipment on site at the pivot, yes or no? If not, someone else would have to have got the backhoe from elsewhere, right, to operate it at that area, the pivot. Though, if Don Haley has been out there over summertime, more so to do with post Dylan's disappearance, I assume, was Don just keeping the area, maintaining it, making sure no one came down to interrupt it or search? Is that a possibility? And then up to a certain point where Brenner was taken in and charged, Don thought, no, because it doesn't quite correlate in terms of the timing. Forget that, okay, about the charge bit. But like with Brenner being, taken away eventually into custody, did Don at some point think, well, there's nothing more for me to do here, I might as well just go on now? Was Don there for other reasons, right? The original concept is Don was only here because the owner of the area asked him, I guess as a favour, and that's what Don did. But did Don, somehow know about this area being used for Dylan's, burial? Did he play a part? Or was he completely oblivious of it? I don't know. But maybe you've got a better idea. Just give your thoughts down below, your opinion. Even just in summary, do you think the pivot, what you see on screen with the red marker, needs to be searched by the LE, family, volunteers, whoever, everyone, anyone? Do you think it needs to be searched? Has it been searched? And if so, does it need to be researched? Okay. Sure, Candice Cooley may have brushed it off. You may think, well, there we go, case closed. But really, is that the case? Is that practical to be thinking that way, right? If Candice Cooley Justin have not been able to find Dylan yet, then maybe you should start thinking outside of the box and looking elsewhere, right? It can't get any worse, right? If people have already been inaccurate and made mistakes and got stuff wrong, then either you make mistakes and get things wrong yourself, which you're on par with them, or you think outside of the box and it just so happens to go right, you get lucky and you find Dylan and it's successful. But has it got anything to do with soil disturbance? That with time it becomes harder. Now, as said earlier on in this video, we still need to look at the wash, and maybe the wash is of more importance. Ty Corbin has been there himself in the wash, Lance Kelly too, but they have also searched elsewhere in between. So that puts in a bit of perspective, doesn't it, of other areas. Quinton, though, does seem very certain and focused on the wash itself, which I just wanted to highlight so you're aware. Now, is it possible for Brenner to walk the horse directly up to the railroad tracks? And exactly what area were those tracks in? A little bit unrelated from the pivot, but like how Weezer said, it's literally on the other side of the tracks. What are we exactly talking? Right, exactly where are the tracks? Are we saying that, you twat, do not rotate, I did not ask you to. Are we saying that Brenner got his horse and directly walked north on and on and on and on and on, literally right up to here, where you see that like little dirt road? Literally right here, in parallel to the tracks, here, where that marker is, grain shed being down that way. Was it in a literal straight line, yes or no? If so, isn't that impractical? Because once you get to this point here, you start going into the bloody wash. And if you're going into the wash, doesn't it dip down, making it a bit impractical? You get what I'm saying? Because the depth of the wash seems fairly deep. There'll be some areas you can gallop down, but with a horse, is it practical? Will the horse slip, break its legs, fall over? I don't know. As for the time when there was some like little behind the scenes VIP footage of Mob Crew Chris with Candice Cooley, the crew, the K9 unit Texas Equisearch, when they did the big push before winter time in 2022, when they were descending into the wash, it seemed very, very steep, and that was in a vehicle, and they had to go very slow. So, if you're walking into the wash, you probably could run down, or you could tumble, roll down. Maybe Brenner would, because you can relate to like a barrel of beer or something, bouncing down, might cushion his fall as well. But what about a horse? Would it be as practical? That's what I'm trying to say. If the horse tracks are literally right up against the railroad tracks, then how did they get across the wash, which is in between grain shed property over that way and railroad tracks, which is just here? You see, the wash divides both down the middle. Can you see? So is there a certain area of the wash where it's not as deep and it becomes normal level, the ground, terrain? Can anyone answer that? Because if not, then likely the horse tracks might have been exaggerated and were here at the tip of this dirt road, which is adjacent to the railroad tracks, but what distance are we talking about? From there to like here. about 1,800 foot, right? To get somewhere like here, in adjacent to the railroad tracks, you'd probably have to follow this dirt road, middle of the screen, the white one, join up with the orange line, and then turn back round and like go side by side with that dirt track, as you see, walking the horse all the way up down it to here, right? To this spot. Do the horse tracks have anything to do in correlation to when Brenner went to the pond at 2:51 p.m. at the time when the phone pinged final one directly at the pond, and Brenner circled back, coming down this way, as I just showed you with the horse? I don't know, it seems very broken up, that. Candice Cooley has not talked about the horse tracks since, nor has Justin. It was only ever really brought up once in a video. Is there a reason for that? You know? Now, Weezer's comment was more so literally opposite the pivot. Now, the pivot is here. If we're saying opposite, then we're talking about right here, aren't we? But this is further away from the grain shed property, which doesn't seem to show up there. So, from there to where? Somewhere, it was saying like literally opposite, it's about like 1.73 miles. You know? But when zooming out, you can see the possibilities of how one would get to the area, right? Such as to the pivot. But of course, you can leave your thoughts and extended notes down below. So I think we've covered it enough for now. Hopefully it causes some discussions, key questions, answers. Maybe it leads on to something. Ty Corbin, have you managed or tried reaching out to the LE about the land need searching? Has Lance Kelly done that either? Has Lance Kelly ever gone down to this pivot north of the grain shed property? If anyone knows, let me know down below. If you have questions yourself, list them in the comment section too. But if you've got additional information which could either debunk this whole concept idea or reinforce it, make sure to list it down below. Hopefully you did find the video somewhat interesting, and yeah, of course we see what happens next, what information comes about, or just the next theme talking point. Maybe I can do a smaller video to do with that root cellar. Make sure I do that before I forget. Any other talk? I mean, the wash as well. I just feel like with the wash, just a little bit more material, it'd probably be better. I think I did actually do some ground footage analysis of the wash when Lance Kelly went down there and noticed there was some track marks, possibly. But I don't want to get too mixed up. And there was another time before that when looking at the track marks by Mob Crew Chris when he did his drone footage and noticed track marks in the wash. But that was later debunked by the police as search and rescue, an excavator or some ATV or something, right? But there is some original tracks which Candice Cooley noticed, which have been photographed in the past. Try and get a hold of them, which is doable, I believe. One of the photos, and have a look at it. I don't know how long the video will be, but we'll just see what we can do, okay? But, you know, if it's gone a bit heavy deep or if it's been a bit chaotic, the chat, you never know. If any of the minions or soggy people have infiltrated or there's been any disruption anywhere, I guess maybe the next video can be a bit more light-hearted and dodgy and a bit funny. So there is that. Maybe the Betty Hayward one will come sooner. I guess we'll see. You know, it's getting near bedtime. The bed is flat. No one hiding under the sheets, even though some people said that they were going to all jump in the bed or something. Yeah, there's some interesting conversations last night. But I think we'll leave it there for now in general. And yeah, time will tell what happens next. But for now, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Goodbye and good night.